This week on the Steele Report.
You know, these guys come away with us, and we just need to give them more respect and appreciate more for what they've done for our country. And
I probably got more from the service than I gave to it.
It's flight number 51 for the Eastern Iowa Honor Flight, and today we'll bring you some of the sights and sounds of that very special trip to Washington, D.C. Plus,
I'm really looking forward to it, some time with family, just to get away.
You'll hear from retiring Waterloo Police Chief Joe Leibold about his more than 3 decades with the Waterloo Police Department. And our program begins right now.
Now from KWWL, this is the Steele Report.
And welcome to this week's edition of the Steele Report. In just a few minutes right here on this program, you're going to hear directly from Waterloo Police Chief Joe Leibold, who just retired from the Waterloo Police Department on Friday after 34 years. Here's some video from a very special ceremony held in his honor on Friday at City Hall, as I asked him about his 3 decades of service to the citizens of Waterloo. But first on the program today, a special trip recently to Washington, D.C. You know, the National Honor Flight Network began back in 2005 with a single flight out of the state of Ohio. Now, all these years later, there are 3 honor flights right here in the KWWO viewing area. The Cedar Valley Honor Flight flies out of the Waterloo Regional Airport. The Dubuque Honor Flight, of course, flies out of the Dubuque Regional Airport. And then you have the Eastern Iowa Honor Flight out of the Eastern Iowa Airport in Cedar Rapids. These honor flights have been taking our veterans to Washington, D.C. over the past several years free of charge as a way of saying thank you for your service. And recently, the Eastern Iowa Honor Flight invited KWWL to be the media sponsor for its latest flight, number 51. And right now, here are some of the sights and sounds from that very special day in late May. Quite a scene at the Reagan National Airport as hundreds of waiting passengers cheer loudly for the Iowa veterans as they arrive in Arlington, Virginia, near Washington, D.C. 88 Iowa veterans on this trip, the 51st Eastern Iowa Honor Flight out of Cedar Rapids.
I've never had an applause like that in my life, you know.
I said it was overwhelming because there's so many people here. And
Turns out this was the first of many warm welcomes for the Iowans. No matter where they went, someone was cheering and saying thank you for your service. Each veteran is assigned a guardian to help them get around throughout the day. And many times the guardian is a family member, like Melissa Fohl, who traveled from Madison, Wisconsin to be the guardian for her dad, former West Union school teacher Phil Potter.
I think it's great.
Since I live far away, it's nice to be able to just have a whole day, you know, dedicated to spending time with Dad. And
Dad likes it.
And say what, Dad?
And Dad likes it.
And Dad likes it too, so that helps.
Cedar Rapids residents Don Spratty and his daughter Melanie say they certainly appreciate the opportunity to be on this trip with the other Iowa veterans.
It took about 2 years from the time we put the application in until he got the call that he was selected to go for this honor flight, and really glad that it was able to happen for him.
I think she can maybe understand and appreciate the time I spent in the service. It was 3 years I spent in service to my country, and I don't regret 1 second of it.
The most important thing is that we're recognizing people that have gone before, you know, and they are the ones to be honored.
The honor flight is well named. It is an honor, and it's an honor for me to be here with my dad. My dad is a man of honor. He's taught his family honor, and he has honored his God and his country.
We have a great team, so it's been very simple, and it's very easy to do when you are doing it for the veterans, and being able to just give them that thank you.
The U.S. effort during World War II.
The bus guide provides the Iowa veterans with a wealth of historic information as they get the opportunity to see many of the truly picturesque sights and sounds of our nation's capital. Eastern Iowa Honor Flight number 51 out of Cedar Rapids was a little bit unusual this time in a couple of ways, As our veterans gathered at the Eastern Iowa Airport early on the morning of May 28th, Naomi learned that the flight to Washington, D.C. unfortunately would be delayed by about an hour and a half. In addition, this flight was a little bit unusual in that there were no World War II veterans on this particular trip to D.C.
Make us famous, Ron.
So, with Eastern Iowa Honor Flight 51 already a little bit behind schedule and with no World War II veterans on this particular trip, we decided to skip the World War II Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial this time in an effort to stay on schedule and let these Iowa veterans stop at some of the other memorials built in their honor.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, guys. What's up, Jerry? But the one stop, which always seems to be the most emotional, is the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknowns.
Recent arms. Arms. Ready. Face.
Kind of overwhelming with the respect that is done here and overseas in the cemeteries over there. It's a remembrance, and it's showing people the sacrifices made.
Per tradition, the Iowa veterans gathered for the large group photograph, which is no easy task with so many wheelchairs. The Guardians seem to enjoy this photo op as much as the veterans. Across the street is the cemetery itself, and that's where I talked to veteran Tom Colthurst and his guardian, John Majeski, both out of Washington, though John grew up not too far from here over in Greene. Like the others, they say they were very moved by what they've seen on this special day.
It means a lot. I've been on the list for a long time, and with COVID, it kind of took its toll on the honor flight. But this has been a great experience. You know, very, very somber and sobering.
Exactly.
With the changing of the guard. I just think the total sacrifice of everyone here, and people that never had the opportunity to have a family, to have a child, to meet a niece or a nephew.
Right.
That part is just kind of overwhelming.
Pretty up and down, pretty humbling for me. It's a lot to take in, and I have a lot of respect for the veterans, but even more so after today. I got pretty emotional, goosebumps. There's a lot to be thankful for just on a regular, everyday basis, and a lot of people take that for granted, myself included. And today is just a great reminder.
That really gets to a person. It's a very emotional thing that they do, and I don't know if a person could come away with that without feeling something.
I think that Arlington is one of the more emotional times, and it gives them a chance to reflect on maybe some of the fallen soldiers that they have had. And I think it also gives us a gratitude for those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and for the country. And this is just quite a reminder of what that sacrifice is.
Being here on this whole program of the honor flight, you know, is something that is really spectacular, you know, and how appreciative people are, expression of that. And yeah, the effort that has been taking place, you know, to organize this, and over the years, you know, it's really fantastic.
What more can I say that it is an honor? I'm proud of Dad, I'm proud of what he did, and thankful for the folks who volunteered to put this organization together. It's a great event.
Eastern Iowa Honor Flight President Lynette Voss says it takes quite a team to put this all together.
It usually takes us about 4 months to actually plan a flight, from the time of inviting the veterans to actually flight day. It takes a good 20 to 30 regular volunteers to get that organized, and then for us to actually do the orientation, provide all of the information that we do for them, we have an additional 30 to 40 volunteers, that help us at the homecoming, the send-off, and everything like that. Yes, it takes a lot of people.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks, Bailey. Thanks, Sydney.
The Iowa veterans would soon discover that the warm welcomes and thank yous were far from over. These visiting Colorado students lined up to greet our veterans and thank them as Honor Flight 51 paid a visit to the 9/11 Pentagon Memorial.
I loved it. I just love them young kids like that. The respect that they gave the military it just makes my heart warm.
At the 9/11 Pentagon Memorial, that student greeting was certainly special for Vietnam veterans Danny Roberts and John Abbott from Marshall and Story counties, both whom say they truly appreciate that Americans still honor those who died on 9/11.
Looks like it went in the Pentagon.
It's a recognition of memory of the people who did nothing wrong, innocent people who died that day from terrorists.
John Abbott especially appreciates the huge welcome in Washington, D.C. on this day because he did not receive any welcomes like that after he came home from Vietnam.
It's a long-deserved welcome that we never received when we came back. All of the people that greeted us, because when I come home from Vietnam, there was no greeting like that. So that really touched my heart.
Patty Herman of Swisher served as the guardian for both John and Danny on this special trip.
It was very touching seeing all the memorials and the changing of the guard. I've never been to Washington, D.C. before, so it meant a lot to me. My father served in World War II, and he's deceased, so I wanted to give back and go with these two young gentlemen.
While at the 9/11 Pentagon Memorial, Eastern Iowa Honor Flight volunteer, that's retired U.S. Army Colonel Timon Ojeri, talked to visiting students about what happened there on 9/11. Timon was working inside the Pentagon when terrorists hijacked American Airlines Flight 77 and deliberately crashed it into the building, killing all 64 people on board and another 125 who were working inside the Pentagon that day.
It's very honoring to come back. Yes, I worked in the building. It was basically my office that was hit that day. I was fortunate. I was not there. By the grace of God, there goes, myself and others. But I lost 11 colleagues that day from that attack.
8 Iowans died on 9/11, including 2 Eastern Iowans in the Pentagon attack. Waverly native Karen Kincaid was on board Flight 77. And specialist Craig Amundsen, a Cedar Rapids native who grew up in Anamosa, was inside the Pentagon that day. Sometimes, for various reasons, our Iowa veterans are quite hesitant to take the honor flight trip. But luckily, often they change their mind.
Yeah, this Thanksgiving, I had asked Dad before, and he said, I'm not so sure I want to try that out. And then he said, you know what, I thought about it, and let's sign up. So over Thanksgiving, when I was home visiting, we filled out the paperwork, and then we got a call very quickly, so we were very lucky and happy to be able to come.
At the Iwo Jima Memorial, a rainbow appeared upon our arrival, and that's where veteran Merle McCoy of Ely and his guardian Marilyn Binge took time to reflect on this day.
Well, it's been great. We had little problems with the flight, but other than that, everything's been well organized and well designed, and we've seen things that if we did it on our own, it would probably take twice as long.
One of the things you brought up was going over to the unknown soldier. When we walked up there, they were playing the end of the taps. And whenever I hear taps played, I was played at my grandfather's funeral and my dad's funeral, and they have that, it just brings tears to my eyes because I just think of, because my dad was in Korea, my grandpa was it's been a great day.
Indeed it was, and after this event-filled trip to Washington, D.C., it was time to head back home on another Sun Country flight out of Reagan National Airport. About halfway home on this flight, a nice surprise for the Iowa veterans. They all received the brand new USS Iowa crest, representing that ship throughout its life cycle. They also received a USS Iowa coin, both courtesy of retired U.S. Navy Captain Pete Welch of the USS Iowa Commissioning Committee located in Cedar Rapids. And then it was time for a mail call.
So there's going to be letters from home, so extended family, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers. There'll also be letters from area schools, and then just patrons of the community that just want to give their thanks too.
Many of these mail call letters are quite personal, and this part of the trip always seems to catch our veterans a little off guard, as mail call was something that many veterans remember vividly as they waited for mail call day while serving overseas. Those mail call memories can be quite emotional. Remember, many of these veterans were just teenagers or in their early 20s when they were sent overseas into battle. And then perhaps an even bigger surprise upon arrival back home at the Eastern Iowa Airport, even though our return flight was about 2 hours late. Look at the crowd. About 1,000 people showed up to greet the veterans when they arrived back home at the Eastern Iowa Airport.
So our next flight will be September and October. We do have 700 people on our wait list. World War II and Korean or medically expedited will get the opportunity to go right away. We would get them on a fall flight. But Vietnam veterans really need to fly as soon as possible because the wait list is about 1.5 to 2 years before you're able to get on flight. So the sooner you apply, the better. You can apply on our website, eihonorflight.org, or request an application.
So what a day it was indeed. A huge thank you to the Eastern Iowa Honor Flight President Lynette Voss and her great staff and all of her dedicated volunteers for asking KWWL to be a part of the latest honor flight. Flight number 51, and it was a great experience. Coming up next, Joe Leibold talks about his retirement after 34 years with the Waterloo Police Department. And welcome back to this week's edition of the Steele Report. My very special guest today is now the former Waterloo Police Chief, Joe Leibold, 34 years on the department, Chief, and I think I'll always call you that, even though I've known you for quite a number of years. What's it like to retire? I mean, what was that like on Friday, do you think? What's that feeling like?
I'm really looking forward to it, some time with family, just to get away. My job's high stress. It's very busy, very active, keeps me doing a lot of things, so just a little bit of a breather will be kind of nice.
Yeah, really. Now, you've been the chief almost 2 years. We'll go back and show you the video here when you were first sworn in, and your wife's there with you on that night. That's always a special time. What do you remember about that night, being sworn in after all those years as the chief of police? Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I was in the military for 9 years, and I was a Waterloo police officer several years, several promotions. My family was never at any of them. It was not an event, so to speak. Now we make more of an event of it. We have family come for sergeants, lieutenants, captains. But when I got promoted through the ranks, it wasn't really a thing. It was, here you go do your job. So my family never got to witness any of my promotions. So that was the only one they were able to be there for me and with me. And it was really kind of special.
Yeah, that was really a nice event. I had the privilege of watching your ceremony on Friday. So great to have your 90-year-old mom there from Cascade, along with your wife, Jill. And by the way, as you mentioned, your wife, Jill, also retired from her job after 3 decades on Friday, the same day you retired. A couple of your kids were there, a lot of the current and former officers, both from Waterloo and Cedar Falls. So that was truly a nice gesture toward you. When you get your gun retirement, that's kind of a special moment. So why is that important to you? And you said your mother, even in addition to your wife, as at the ceremony for that. So what does that mean to you, having your weapon?
Well, you know, it's very symbolic. It's what I've carried for a long time. So it's part of, you know, not part of who I am, but just part of what I do. It's been a tool that I've had for years. Fortunately, I've never had to use it, but it's been there, and it's just been something I've had around. I was never really a gun guy before I became in law enforcement, but this one's special to me. It's the last one I'll carry, and as a Waterloo police officer.
I was going to ask you, what's the first one? I think when I first started police covering law enforcement, is in the Davenport. I think they were carrying 357s or something. What did you start with, and what did you end with? Yeah.
Well, I started with a 357, but it was carrying 38 plus P ammunition, so it was a little different. But I started with that only for a few months, and then within a year we had transitioned the entire department to semi-automatics. We got hired, and then they started the transition, so we just kind of missed that. But then they got us, the whole department transitioned within a year of my hire. So within a year I was carrying a Glock 40 caliber.
Okay, so you grew up in Cascade. You're one of the 3 most famous people in Cascade, along with my friend Gary Dolphin and Coach McDermott, of course. In fact, I was just in Dubuque this week for a big event launching the Gary Dolphin Scholarship. What do you remember about growing up in a small town like that? And then also, when you first started, you went to Guttenberg as a police officer.
Well, you know, I do know both those men. They're a little older than me. I have a large family, and they were in classmates of my sisters. So yeah, I grew up over there. I'm far from one of the most famous people from Cascade. There's a lot of others, a few professional baseball players I could name.
There you go. Yeah.
But you know, it was typical small town life. It was, you know, I grew up in town, but I worked on a farm for a long time, and kind of got into that and realized that was a lot of work and not something I wanted to do full time. So started looking for other options.
So I want to give reference to Jeff Ryan. It's a great reporter for the Courier. He wrote a nice article on you this week, so I'm sure you appreciate that. What drew you to law enforcement, though? I remember you said you started out in the military. You were in the Army National Guard at a very young age, weren't you?
Yeah, I joined the National Guard at the age of 17. It was they had I think they still do, a split-out program. I joined in the summer of my junior year. I went to basic training, and then the summer of my senior year, I went to advanced training. So there wasn't a lot of celebration for high school graduation. I was on my way to boot camp again. So I did both those in them 2 summers, and then I was an active member of the National Guard for 9 years, and got out of there when my kids got to the point where it was like I was getting pulled too many different directions. I didn't feel like I was fully able to invest in anything, and it was just like I need to be here. And so I focused solely on law enforcement and my family.
Very humble person, but what are you most proud of?
You know, I think I'm most proud of the relationships I built over the years. You know, I've been involved with a lot of good cases, a lot of good things, but like I said earlier, it's a people business, and I've really developed relationships with people that I would have never met. You know, you, Rick, just people in the media, people in town, community activists. I just feel that that's important. I get calls from people that I would have never met had I not done this job or came to Waterloo. So I think the relationships I built, both internally and externally, I mean, some great officers I've worked with who've taught me so much. I just think that's probably the biggest thing.
And what advice do you have for your successor? What's the biggest challenge, do you think, right now?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, not department-wide, but nationally, is staffing. Unfortunately, that doesn't affect us. We are fully staffed, and we continue to maintain that with the support of our elected body. So that's a benefit. But you got to stay on that. You can't just, you know, assume you're going to stay there. And we've got good command staff in place to drive these initiatives forward and to keep things going in a positive manner. And I think we just need to be positive people.
This day and age, how do you build trust between your officers who are on the street every day and the residents they serve? That's been difficult. What's the best way to approach that, do you think?
Well, I think it's one-on-one. I mean, you see a lot about, you know, community policing programs and community policing things. To me, community policing is every stop, every initiative, every call. We're dealing with people at their worst possible times. So you just need to be kind and understand that, you know, they may be having a bad day, but it's not your job to add to that. You should just be nice and try to get through things. And, you know, you can be nice and write a ticket. You can be nice and arrest someone, but just try to be kind and understand that, you know, people are people, and they're going to be emotional. They're going to have issues. And unfortunately or fortunately, we're the ones that get called for a lot of that. And when you do that, you get into high emotional situations.
Right. So I'll give you the last word here. What would you like to say to the people of Waterloo about serving their community for 34 years? That's a long time.
It's been an honor and a privilege. I cannot be more grateful for what the city has allowed me to do. I would have never dreamed when I got hired of being the chief of police. I guarantee I have several high school teachers were just as shocked as I was. But it's really been a tremendous learning experience, broadened just the scope of what I deal with and who I communicate with and how I communicate. It's just been so much of a privilege to be able to raise my family here and grow my kids. And, you know, I have 3 very successful children that are out in the world now, semi-out. They still have my cell phone, but they're out in the world doing their thing. And I'm so grateful for what Waterloo's done for me.
All right. Chief Joe Leibold, congratulations. Great career. Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to take a break here on the Steele Report and wrap things up here in just a moment.
Wow, this is great.
And welcome back as we wrap up yet another edition of the Steele Report. Now, next week, I am scheduled to have as my guest Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, so you won't want to miss that. And as always, thanks for watching. See you next week.